Vish, increasing uncertainty around Pat Cummins' fitness for this series, and particularly the first test, it sounds like he's a major doubt for. How big an advantage is that to England? I suppose, firstly, you're obviously, there's that disappointment that an Australia captain, a great at the game, isn't going to be available from the point of view of the spectacle, but from a competitive point of view, it does feel like a big advantage if it comes to pass.
Yeah, it's from an England perspective, it's a somber quote from an England player about how you want the best players playing, and then it's a fist pump when the cameras are off kind of thing, because he has been, I suppose, as talismanic, if not more so than Ben Stokes, actually. We're going to give Ben Stokes credit for how he's lifted the England team after a really dreadful couple of years, then flip it over to Australia's side and see all the things that Pat Cummins has accomplished as Australia captain, like tangible things he's accomplished as Australia captain. And it's pretty special, really, not least given the constant heat on him, even the objection to his appointment in the first place, which I suppose is more from tradition rather than anything about him as a cricketer or a cricketing brain. But yeah, I mean, it's such a big deal. There are so many different strands to it, and obviously we may as well start with the bowling side, because if you think about one of the big talking points from an England perspective has been, say, will Joe Root get this 100 monkey off his back this winter? Well, the reason he hasn't is because the bloke who's got him out the joint most times in Test cricket is Pat Cummins. And if you consider that Cummins, against England in particular, rarely takes the new ball, and if you look at all his dismissals, it's either someone who's got in the top three, Root, or the middle order, and, the chips away at the tail as well. So he is one of those bowlers who always seems to have an impact. His record against England is really impressive. 91 dismissals at 24. You take it to Australia and it's 44 at 21.5. I think he's such a big deal. Even with the Root thing, you kind of rule out Cummins. Obviously, Hazelwood's got about 10 times compared to Cummins' 11. So there is still that problem there. But yeah, it feels like the threat isn't as... Well, it's not coming from both ends, put it that way.
I think the other interesting thing, obviously Cummins did miss a test in the last Ashes series in Australia. I think one of the possible differences is that Australia's fast bowling depth doesn't really seem to be there in the same way as maybe it was last time. You think some of the guys who have been discussed as potential replacements is sort of lower down the pecking order aren't really fit or aren't really playing. You even have the situation with Scott Boland, where he was obviously incredible in that 21-22 series, took 18 wickets at 9, went a 2 and over. But then I think the fact that a very different England team 18 months later took him to pieces, really. It scored nearly 5 and over against him. I think he only took 2 wickets in 2 tests in that Ashes series in 23. I think that is a huge difference, and I think England will go and specifically target him as much as anything. They've been pretty good actually throughout the McCullum-Stokes era at picking weak links in opposition attacks. Think of Michael Bracewell, think of Shardul Thakur, and really going after them. Yes, Southey was a good example as well. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they really look to try and dominate against Boland early on, and that then means more bowling for Lyon. It means more bowling for Hazelwood and Stark, who are obviously not getting younger. So I think there is, it would be a huge plus for England if that does come to pass. The other factor is, runs down the order. If you think of huge. Cummins in the 23 Ashes, a 30 and the match-winning 40-odd at Edgbaston in the first test, and some runs at the Oval as well. If you're suddenly shifting Mitchell Stark up to number 8 and then have, potentially Hazelwood, Lyon and Boland from 9 to 11, I think that England will fancy, given the pace that they have, running through that in a way they wouldn't necessarily be able to with Cummins.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. If you look at his 29 innings against England, he's scored 20 or more 14 times, which doesn't sound like much, but the fact that he's batted most of the time at 9 and 10 shows just... Well, it feels, obviously the stats are there, but it almost feels anecdotal. How many times have you watched England, particularly in Australia, get them to a point where they're like, 5 or 6 down, got a good momentum here, bowlers tire a bit, and suddenly it's always Brad Haddin, but every now and again it's Pat Cummins comes in and makes them pay. So yeah, it's such a big thing. I think the interesting thing as well is he came into that 23 Ashes series probably focusing more on his batting, certainly like from some of the conversations I've had, particularly about hitting down the ground. And if you rewatch that second innings at Edgbaston, he does that to Joe Root, and the game flips in that moment. England take a couple of wickets, they feel like they're on something, and then I think Cummins hits Root maybe twice down the ground, and it just quietens the atmosphere a bit. I think he's the kind of person, particularly with the ball, but also as he showed there with the bat, he like loves the big moments without necessarily like, I don't know, using it as a crutch for all the things he's good at. So he probably doesn't get enough credit for being a clutch player per se. But yeah, a huge miss, whichever way you spin it.
And in terms of the captaincy, Smith, I don't think is a particular downgrade in terms of on-field.
No, I don't think so. I wonder what it will do for reviews though, because Smith is very anti, and I think Cummins' ability to, I suppose, calm a situation, or at least wait for the calm in a situation, even though it's only 15 seconds, always feels quite important. So, yeah, I mean, I think because of the age of that team, there are a lot of leaders in different ways, and disseminating information you get from X, Y, and Z has always been quite a key component of being Australia captain. And people maybe associate Smith's freneticism, controlled freneticism, obviously, as a bit of like a mind that not necessarily wanders but goes this way and that way, and he's got a million ideas in his head. But I think even as captain, he was always quite good at doing that. So yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's too much of a shift beyond not being able to call on Pat Cummins.
Yeah, I think England will see it as a stroke of luck. I remember Rob Key at some point this summer was sort of almost not moaning, but rolling his eyes about the fact that Australia somehow managed always to keep Cummins, Hazelwood, and Stark fit. So would be quite a good boost from that perspective, at least if he does miss the first test or two.